Absolutely nothing. And don't worry, we'll get to it when we get there. Hello everyone, this video is a follow-up to my original windbreaker review. If you haven't watched it yet, please do. The link will be in the description below. And if you haven't already, please subscribe if you want to see more of my content. Alright, so to those who have already caught up with the current events of the manga or generally don't care about spoilers, let's continue where I last left off. So with the possibility of an attack from Yamato and those who associate with him, Bufurin is on high alert and ramps up the patrolling as well as non-stop training during downtime. Everyone is on edge, but no one is more on edge than Sakura, who is taking training very seriously. It makes sense, Umemiya entrusted Sakura to deal with Yamato when the time comes. Plus, after the events of the Roppo Ichisa arc, he realizes that the main goal shouldn't be at the cost of people's lives. He knows he can't save everyone, but being a bit stronger and a bit faster can make a difference. Now, if this was Sakura at the beginning, this line of thinking wouldn't even cross his mind. But because he met people who are willing to accept him and came to know everyone in town, it slowly started to become a place he's willing to protect, whether he realized it or not. Umemiya noticed this as well and shares the story of his life before Bufurin to let Sakura know he's not alone in this feeling and is happy this town changed Sakura enough to call it home. I know what some of you are thinking, but I'm telling you now that whatever you're thinking regarding Umemiya's role in this upcoming arc, it's not going to go the way that you think it is. Trust me. And with the declaration of war to destroy Bufurin in 2 weeks, everyone prepares for the inevitable battle. Before the battle takes place, the grade captains and their co-captains hold a strategic meeting regarding the declaration Yamato and Code made. For starters, Yamato and his team will arrive at midnight on the dot, and while they don't know where exactly they'll be, there are 3 possible ways to enter: the forest park, the river, and the main road. So the plan is to divide and defend to become a full-scale defense to protect the town. Team Sojo and Komon-kun will be at the park, Team Jinkon-kun will be at the main road, and Team Tamon will be at the river, with each grade captain guarding the 3 bridges across the river. Since they also don't know how many enemies there'll be a group chat where a vice captain from each grade can send a signal if they either need backup or can handle it. Another thing to note is that the declaration came with 2 important rules. That as long as they see any Bufurin members still standing, they won't touch the town, and Umemiya has to remain within the school grounds. And if the enemy sees Umemiya in town, it gives them the green light to start attacking the town. Even though Umemiya is benched, there's still a chance that the other team's got this, right? Right? Ooh, yeah, that looks about right. I will admit, the scene where the 4 Heavenly Kings reminisce on how they fought this amount of enemies in their early years, and when everyone quotes the Bufurin Creed while prepping up for the battle, is one of the coolest and hardest scenes the manga could ever deliver. The battle officially starts, and at first, things appear to be going smoothly. Sakura's team even has a battle formation thanks to Suo, with Sakura and Sugisha being at the front lines and forced to work together. But this is just a sample of what's to come, as there's a certain group among the enemies that Bufurin are looking for, or rather expecting to show up. Like Yamato and Takashi, they were former Bufurin students who went toe-to-toe with Umemiya and the 4 Heavenly Kings, a group known as Noroshi, consisting of these guys right here and one fanboy. And boy oh boy, they're not subtle with their interests, as their aura practically oozes strongly, quickly turning the tides of the battle and forcing the grade captains to prioritize taking down each member of Noroshi, since it will be pretty hard to ignore them. We do get some great highlights from Nirei and Sakura, with Nirei doing his best to take down as many enemies as he can, and even looking badass in this one panel right here when he's about to punch an enemy. Although the impact of his punch is more akin to this. Once again, I'm glad that the mangaka is being realistic here, but it doesn't take away from Nirei's efforts. He manages to help out everyone long enough for Suo to come back and join in after handling his one-on-one battle in the most unintentionally hilarious manner. I like how this guy was excited to take on a stronger opponent with a whole backstory and everything, only to get his ass kicked in that same chapter. As for Sakura, he starts to gain a new perspective on fighting when he observes Sugisha's fighting style. He never had this line of thinking before because he's used to fighting alone and head on, but since he has to work with Sugisha to take down the Noroshi member, he not only has to watch his own back but also Sugisha's. So when he leaves Sugisha to handle the opponent, it's like he opens his eyes for the first time and begins to think like a captain, one who sees the strengths and weaknesses of each player and strategizes similar to a game of chess. Surprisingly, Sugisha also picked up on some things too, using his weakness as an advantage for Sakura to deal the final blow. It's like the two are finally seeing eye to eye and understanding how to work together. They still hate each other's guts though. But there's no time to celebrate as they just received word that the enemy broke through the forest park. Not because the team was weak or anything, but because of the two monsters that just entered the playing field, Yamato and Takashi. With no time to lose, Sugera urges Sakura and Sugisha to head to the park where everyone else deals with the rest, despite the still huge quantity of enemies. And if things haven't gotten any worse, they're about to be, as the Noroshi member that Sakura and Sugisha just dealt with regained consciousness. Well, since this is a war arc, usually when things take a heavy turn, there's always a bright side to this. And there is. After all, what kind of war arc would this be without some good old reinforcements, baby? Yeah, I knew they would show up here, thanks to Sakura asking Shishitora and Robo Ichisa for a favor, and texting them at the start of the battle. Without telling one else, by the way. I know Sakura didn't know how many enemies would show up, but after sending the text, you would think he would give everyone else a heads up. Anyway, Togami, Choji, and Susuri all have a chance to shine. Some highlights include Togami putting the Noroshi member that Sakura and Sugisha dealt with in a chokehold, while mildly talking about Sakura and how grateful he is to have a friend. Susuri using the lessons he learned from the previous arc to motivate himself while simultaneously taking a page out of Tsubaki's fighting style. And for Choji, he handles most of the enemies and deals 2 powerful punches to some members of Noroshi, while saying one hell of a badass line calling back to his fight with Umamiya. So, how was it? Did that feel heavy?
Wicked sick.
Either as it may, there's still some struggle for Bufurin in dealing with the rest of Noroshi, such as Kanji's team, who are currently dealing with this lovely ball of masochism. And I'm not speaking hyperbole here, the manga literally straight up says that this person is a masochist. He's putting Kanji through the ringer and heavily injuring his teammates, pushing Kanji to his breaking point and releasing the beast within.
Release the beast, boys! Let the killing commence!
No, not that kind of beast. In my previous video, I mentioned how Kanji has a reputation for being violent and unpredictable. For a reputation like that, you can imagine the level of self-hatred Kanji has for himself, as even Kanji describes his blind rage as sparks flying, followed by unconscious bodies. And he would have fallen further into this pit if not for the one person who helped them when they were kids, Hiragi. I kinda failed to mention this in my last video. Okay, scratch that. I purposely left it out of my script because it felt like it would be information overload in one video. Plus, the manga gives more context on these two relationships during this arc, so now's a good time as any to go over this. Throughout the manga, it's shown that Kanji and Hiragi have history with each other, similar to Hiragi's history with Sako. They met after Hiragi saved Kanji from his usual violent rage. Even though Hiragi reassures Kanji that the situation is already handled, Kanji still feels like a monster. It was actually Hiragi that gave Kanji the tools to work around his anger issues, causing Kanji to look up to Hiragi similar to Sako. But unlike Sako, when Hiragi told Kanji he shouldn't follow him anymore, Kanji still does because to him, Hiragi is like an older brother. The relationship is parallel to Kanji's and Sakura's relationship. In fact, the rooftop where Kanji took Sakura to have their chats is the same one Hiragi took Kanji when Kanji ran through Sakura's dilemma of being chosen as grade captain and coming to terms with accepting his weaknesses. It does explain how Kanji knew what to say to Sakura, as if he had first-hand experience with those feelings. And he still does feel this way, but like what he told Sakura when Sakura became Great Captain, he's just doing his best. If he has to resort to that blind rage to protect his teammates, he will. However, this blind rage turns him into nothing more than an animal for the Noroshi member to take advantage of and further injure Kanji. Even so, like when they were kids, Hiragi came to help after he came across Shishitori and was spoiled by Sakura's surprise. When he heard that the second years were in trouble, he felt compelled to go, but had to prioritize the town's safety. Luckily, Choji offered to take his team and Hiragi to Shopping Street while Hiragi heads to the bridge and sends Sako as backup, mostly because Shishitori wants Sako to make up his friendship with Hiragi. He does eventually, and even before Hiragi's one-on-one fight, Hiragi says the words that Sako secretly wanted him to say all those years ago. As for Hiragi's fight against the masochistic Noroshi member, words cannot express how pissed Hiragi is for Kanji to resort back to something he despised. He does commend Kanji for doing the best he could, but he's still pissed off and quite literally puts the fear of God into Noroshi member. The 180 this guy had from enjoying taking pleasure from Hiragi's punches to being drowned in them and fearing for his life. That's how you know you fucked up. And unlike the rest of Noroshi where they were knocked unconscious, the battle ends with the member too scared to continue, but Hiragi promised if he ever feels like he's itching for another fight to take pleasure from, to come find him. Hey Hiragi, I don't think he'll take on fights anymore. I think you beat it out of him. Moving back to Sakura and Sugishita, once they received the text of Yamato and Takashi showing up, they course corrected to head to the market streets. There, they find Choji and Shishitori, the rest of Furin, and Noroshi's real objective, which is to crush Umamiya. No duh. I think when they added the rule of restricting Umamiya, it was a dead giveaway. Thankfully, one of the Heavenly Kings had planned ahead of time and sent 3 people the strongest combined combat strength to the school already, those being Tsubaki, Susuri, and Nakamura. Yamato and Takashi arrived at the school with high tension in the air, as Tsubaki and Ko are fully prepared to take on both of them. But Umamiya appears to lead Takashi away to the rooftop for their fight, because leaving Tsubaki and the rest to handle Takashi is like giving them the death sentence. So while Takashi and Umamiya head to the rooftop, Tsubaki and the rest are going to handle Yamato so that Umamiya doesn't have to take on 2 strong opponents. With no time to waste, Sakura and Sugishita head to the school, taking down enemies that block their path. Sugishita's injuries from the past fight are starting to catch up to him despite his willingness to fight. Sakura noticed this and offers to hold back the enemies while Sugishita heads to the school, since he knows how much Umamiya means to Sugishita. But in a surprising turn of events, Sugishita was the one to tell Sakura to go. Sugishita, the Umamiya fanboy who's constantly at odds with Sakura because he poses a threat to Umamiya, tells Sakura to go. It takes a moment to gather his thoughts together, but when he does, he realizes that the reason why he let Sakura go is because after watching Sakura all this time so far, he's starting to see just how cool Sakura is as a person. It's something he never thought of before, so it makes sense that he would have conflicting feelings about this. Sakura finally reaches the school gates where he sees a knocked out Susuri and Nakamura, while Yamato has Tsubaki by the hair and knocks them out too. Knowing that he has to stop Yamato here and now, and with everyone relying on him, Sakura starts his fight with Yamato. The fight between Sakura and Yamato is a brutal one. Sakura has become laser focused on fighting Yamato, while Yamato is amused and further intrigued by Sakura's growth. On the subject of Yamato, I think this is a good segue to talk about Yamato himself and his motivations, because there's quite a substantial amount of information regarding his backstory and his relationship with Takashi. For starters, he's often seen as a talented individual, but is often bored with life, both from his successes and how easily he can read people to manipulate in his favor. That is, until he met Takashi, someone who is unpredictable, someone who is extremely violent even as a child, and someone who, for once in his life, Yamato can't get a read on, causing him to develop feelings he never felt before and become infatuated with Takashi. This infatuation leads Yamato to follow Takashi all the way into junior high, seeing him as a godlike figure who would do anything to make him happy, even if he has to threaten the lives of a town to give his quote-unquote savior a chance to fight the only person who Takashi is interested in, Umamiya. Yes, you heard that right. This entire war, gathering all these people, which I think are like 200 based on these shots, and threatening to mess with Fruin was so that Takashi could have this fight with Umamiya. They could care less about the town and Fruin. And some of you are probably thinking, that's fucking lunacy. And I would agree with you. This is fucking lunacy! I find it ironic that for a manipulative person like him, he has a very warped perspective on how friendship, or really any relationship, works. Then again, he even admitted himself that he didn't have the best judgment in character. His relationship with Takashi is extremely one-sided and toxic, as Takashi doesn't really care about Yamato and will only give him attention if he feels like Yamato is getting in his way, usually through violence. But that doesn't matter to Yamato. As long as he keeps seeing Takashi burning bright, he'll feel fulfilled. However, it looks like Sakura is starting to worm his way into his heart as well, as Sakura becomes consumed by rage after Yamato tells him his true objective. And Yamato has those similar feelings to when he first met Takashi. He wants Sakura to come with him, but he knows Sakura's bond with Bufferin stands in the way of that. So he does the one thing he knows best.
The madness, as you know, is like gravity. All it takes is a little push.
And push he does, taking advantage of Sakura's insecurities of Bulagi and twists them to convince him that if he loses this fight, everyone will blame him for his failure and will be dragged down with him. He almost got him to say he'll go with him if Togami, Hiragi, Nirei, Suo, and Sugishita haven't shown up. While Togami and Hiragi deal with Yamato, Nirei, Suo, and Sugishita reassure Sakura the only way boys know how, by punching the self-doubt out of him and telling him that he's not the only one here who can take on Yamato, and similar to the aftermath of the Kill arc, remind him how important he is to them and the willingness to shoulder the burden for him. It's an incredible moment from both Nirei and Suo, with Sugishita being the hidden MVP here, hitting the final nail in the coffin by reminding him of why he came to this town and what Umamiya said about what it means to be at the top. Sakura finally snaps out of it, ready to take another shot at taking down Yamato, except this time he has a different insight going into this fight. Instead of taking down Yamato out of either narrow-mindedness or anger, he's doing it out of his resolve to protect the things he cares about. He finally got what Umamiya was talking about when he said his dream no longer belonged to him, because even if Sakura loses the fight and passes out, there's still some fighters who are able and kicking that can pick up where Sakura left off and finish off Yamato. So he's going to try his best to stand his ground and not go down, but if he's going down, he's going to take Yamato with him. The fight finally ends after Sakura deals a major headbutt to Yamato, knocking them both out for several minutes. When Sakura wakes up, he's surrounded by his friends and comrades congratulating him on his success, and Yamato... First of all, that pose. Second of all, Yamato upholds the agreement Sakura made during their round 2 and calls out the fighting from his side, telling them that they're leaving. There's just only one person left, and he's currently on the rooftop, so with some help from Sakura, they both enter the school where the final climactic fight takes place. The fight between Umamiya and Takashi is like watching two wildfires come together as one. It's wild, chaotic, and destructive, but also has a certain beauty to it, with Sakura and Yamato being the spectators. Takashi is having the time of his life, which makes sense given what we heard about him. However, there's something about this whole thing regarding Umamiya's history with Takashi that I'm just starting to get after rereading it a couple of times. Takashi is someone who never had an interest in things beyond your typical likes and dislikes until, of course, he met Umamiya. Someone who at first was an annoyance for how he kept getting in his way, but over time gained enjoyment from their fights. What he didn't realize that at the time he was starting to see Umamiya as a friend, or at best, a rival. So when Umemiya started to become more diplomatic and involved with reforming the school and Takashi leaving, the stalemate that they had was left unfinished. I think this is what Umemiya meant when he said that this is his fault. He's going to take responsibility for his part by giving Takashi what he wants, but he's aiming to win this. Not only because Sakura is watching, but to finally settle the score and come to understand Takashi. After what feels like a century of punches, kicks, grabs, and maneuvers, both fighters exhaust themselves with Umemiya barely standing and Takashi admitting defeat, but he enjoyed himself. Thus, the win goes to Umemiya, putting this stalemate debacle to a close. Alright, show of hands, who thought Umemiya was gonna die here? I don't blame anyone who goes into this arc blind thinking this is where Umemiya dies from how it's been telegraphed. Umemiya reveals his past, forced to isolate himself from the battle, characters talk about how much Umemiya means to them, really it was only Tsubaki which was shown through a flashback, Umemiya leading one of the main antagonists away in an isolated location, and the biggest red flag to me, talk about how much the town improvement means to him before the fight. It did look like he was down, but he got back almost immediately afterwards, so that doesn't count. Honestly, if the manga ends with Umemiya and the Heavenly Kings graduate and not having to die, I will forever call this manga based. So Takashi and Yamato leave, with each of them having their opponent promising them a future hangout. Yes, even Yamato, as his second fight with Sakura brought him a level of happiness that his relationship with Takashi couldn't bring. But who knows, maybe after Umemiya's speech about people to Takashi, the two can slowly start rebuilding their relationship into a more genuine one. And with a declaration text from Sakura and a fully colored page spread fist bump, the Noroshi Arc officially closes. So far, this is my favorite arc, right next to the Kill arc. I'm interested in hearing how other people feel about this arc, and if you have already read it, please let me know your thoughts on this arc in the comments below. This is where I'm going to stop in the story right now, as it's currently in the post-battle celebration stage. But if you want me to discuss that and a few others, then 15 likes on this video and I'll return to this series as soon as I can. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this video and thanks for watching everyone. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell for more of my manga related content. I hope you have a decent day and I'll see you next time. Bye!
Deep breath, deep breath.